It's time for the only wrestling podcast on earth with 2-time X Division champion, the man behind the man at Impact Wrestling, my best friend and yours. That's Petey Williams.
How's she going, eh?
Pete, we might have Darren McCarty pop in. We might have Lars Fredrickson pop in. We probably won't have Dimitri Young pop in. So why don't you introduce this week's guest?
Oh, man. I mean, we go way back, probably last year. No. I mean, I honestly don't know the first time that we met. I mean, we've always ran into each other and stuff, but
I know we have.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I think the last time I saw you was maybe a couple of years ago, like at a Tommy Dreamer show, maybe.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but many times we run into each other. Don't know where or when or whatever. But anyways, it's my pleasure to introduce the Blue Meanie as our guest.
Hey, thank you very much. Thanks for having me, guys. This is very cool.
All right, so let's start out. You're gray. No.
That's it. I'm leaving. I'm out.
I think the other one I was going to bring up, I was trying to figure out which one was the lesser of the two people.
A little inside baseball to our pre-recording conversation there.
Yeah, if you ever have the Blue Meanie on as a podcast guest, let's not ask him the things he gets asked on every single podcast.
Yeah, try not to do that. So how? No, I was gonna go in part 2, but let's get this moving.
Yeah, you're a good brother. You can ask me anything you want.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm going to start out with you are now, well, not now, but you've been in the podcast medium for a while now, and this is the first time I've gotten to speak with you. I've watched your podcast many times on Fight TV and some Inside Baseball. It was what gave me the idea to approach Fight to bring our podcast over to them. Was watching you guys over there and how well you did and how much fun you guys were having.
Thank you.
Luckily, we're now kind of, I guess, Eskimo brothers on the same network. Does that work that way, guys?
We slept with the same network. That's awesome. Okay.
Woohoo!
How did you get yours on then? Because I had to. Not the same way, I'm guessing. You had that Blue Meanie fan power behind you. I didn't, I guess so.
Yeah, well, it's good to be blue. Or as like Kermit says, it ain't easy being green, it's easy being blue. So, it's just that happened through my co-host Josh Chernoff, who already has a show on the Fight Network called So Says Chernoff, which is kind of like the Daily Show meets pro wrestling, a little bit satirical commentary, and then they'll have a shoot interview, which is legit, not satirical, but he's always had a great relationship with Fight, and Fight's a great network of people, and we do the video version of our podcast on there, kind of like how back in the day Howard Stern would have his radio show, and then later on at night you can watch the radio show on the E Network. So it's along those lines. So it's a lot of fun.
What got you into the podcast world? Because it was like, so I left fantasy football for ESPN to do wrestling. And I had to pull teeth to get Petey on to do the podcast. He was the only wrestler I knew that would even talk to me or return my text. And I finally kind of convinced him by like, hey, do one show. And if you like it, do another. And if you like it, do another. And here we are many years later. He hasn't told me he doesn't like it yet. So we're still doing it. What was your journey?
My journey into podcasting was basically everybody told me I should do one. But I always had trepidation about doing it because there's folks, I mean, like, okay, what am I going to talk about? I know guys like Headbanger Mosh. He had a podcast for a while. He was flying solo, just talking. And he's like, man, I just run out of things to talk about. Mm-hmm. So there's always those like red flags. Like, what do I talk about? I don't want to do reviews. Everybody's doing reviews. There's so many different formulas. So I was like, you know what? I grew up a big fan of talk radio. Especially, Petey, you can relate traveling on the road, and you just need something to keep you, keep your mind occupied to keep from going crazy while traveling, or you're driving 600 miles one way and there's nothing on the radio. And, I might find the Art Bell show and he's talking about UFOs and ghosts and all that good stuff, big fan of that stuff. So, the whole genesis behind Mind of the Meanie was to be a travel companion for anybody or doing, whether you're driving, whether you're, flying or just at work and you're bored and you want to feel like you have somebody there to talk to. Because a lot of times I listen to talk radio and I'm talking to the radio as if they can hear me, kind of thing like that. So kind of want to do that, but it also came down to who do I trust to be a co-host? Because a lot like in wrestling, I was trained by Al Snow, and I learned very early on from Al, you're a representative of the person who breaks you in, So everything I do in the business represents Al. If I do something good, they go, "Hey, Brian did a good thing." If I screw up, they go, "Hey man, what's up with your boy?" So I approached this as the same way. Who could be a good co-host, and who can I trust not to embarrass me? And there's guys who have approached me about doing podcasts, and I see their social media feed. I'm like, no. So I had done an interview with Josh at the ECW arena. He had a show he was doing before the apocalypse and everything shut down, and he had done an interview with me. And after we wrapped, he went, "Hey man, I asked a question. I hope that wasn't a little bit too stiff or this or not and everything." I was like, no. So flash forward, I'm driving home one night. I'm like, man, I'm thinking about this podcast thing. I'm like, this kid, Josh, he's a good kid. We have a good rapport. He's from Philly. We like a lot of the same things. And he was very thoughtful in that moment to go, "Hey man, I didn't, I wasn't a dick when I asked you that question." So I knew I could trust him not to embarrass me. So I approached him and he said yes. And yeah, the funny thing is we were going to go to like a professional studio and do this. And then again, the world shut down and we kind of had to do it, makeshift. And now I got this whole room. Mrs. Meanie helped design for me. We called the Trey Meanie Studios. Her name's Tracy. I'm Meanie, so we're Trey Meanie.
Oh, love it.
Yeah, she painted the wall. She hung photos. We got stickers. I got my BWO belt. She did a great job. And yeah, we've been doing this. We passed our year anniversary episode. We're on episode 63, which I'm waiting for episode 69.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to call the episode.
Yeah, I love it. You got great ideas. I love it.
You know what?
I'm the king of useless knowledge, and that's what the show is: wrestling, music, movies, sports, and tons of useless knowledge, of all of which I can't make money with. So
it's interesting you said that, because I made that mistake early in our podcast, because when we started getting guys on, I was like, I'm going to ask the edgy questions that would get everybody in trouble. And I did. And we had a couple slaps on the wrist from Impact Wrestling where he worked. I didn't even work there, and I got slapped on the wrist a few times. And a couple wrestlers took advantage of our podcast too, and we let them, and we shouldn't have. And then, Pete took a hiatus. He came back, and we kind of agreed this time around, let's just have fun. Screw trying to make the news, which, that's what we're taught when we get in the radio, if you're not making news. And this time around, I think Pete is having more fun now that he's not worried about the questions I am asking.
Yeah, no, I would say definitely, but you were good though. Like I knew I could trust you, and you would run risque questions behind me, but you would put it in a way that it didn't make them sound risky. And I'm like, if they want to go down that path, they can go down that path. And it's sometimes, and it's good that you guys don't have a lot of guests on, because sometimes people will use your platform to try to, you're obviously doing podcasts to get yourself over, but they'll do it to like, hey, let's get some news out to, how's this going to benefit me in a way that doesn't benefit your own podcast. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm assuming, like, is that like your hesitation in having guests on?
It just, that. And, I want to have conversations with people I know I could have a good conversation with, with people I already have a rapport with. And then maybe some people I just want to get to know. And, there's always that trepidation. There's always that fear of having one of those, like when there's one of those interviews where you're like pulling teeth, just like you're getting because I can give you a soliloquy on
I could say, hey, what color is your room? And instead of saying blue, you'd say,
yeah,
whatever. 5 minutes later, and then, okay, I think he said his room was blue. Like, yeah, no, that's
Mrs. Meanie helped me do this. She was using up and down brushstrokes, and I used the West. And let me tell you why she didn't do that. That would be you.
That would be me, and I'm afraid to be like, so how you doing? Good. I'd be afraid of those kind of interviews and stuff like that, where it's just like, all right. Put the pencil in my mouth and, wave the tie, take it home, that kind of thing. Yeah. But occasionally we do have guests. Like one of my favorite guests, most recently is this kid named Giovanni Hamilton. He's a 13-year-old kid who's had 18 surgeries before the age of 13. He has Jampel-Schwartz syndrome, which is a form of dwarfism, but he's such an inspiration. I wanted to share his story with our listeners and stuff like that. And he's gone viral. He became friends with Carson Wentz from the Colt. Well, when Carson was with
I know the kid.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's such a good kid. He's a big wrestling fan. And we became buddies. And I started doing a podcast with him. I do a podcast with him during the season for the Philadelphia Eagles. And just like, like he was the last guest we had maybe like 2 months ago. But, we just try to have our conversation, try to, be something you can relate to, maybe inform something a little bit, or just show the human side of what pro wrestlers go through. We're human beings, and we're not that much different. And it might kill whatever, superstar ability, but, that's what I always loved about shows like Tough Enough, because they showed the struggle, people are like, oh, exposing the business. No. It shows the struggle into what goes behind what we have to do to become a professional wrestler. And they stopped doing Tough Enough. And then all of a sudden the Ultimate Fighter ripped off Tough Enough, and now they're making superstars left and right. So, but that's what I like doing with my podcast, little peek behind the window, a little inside baseball. And we honestly don't know what we're going to talk about until he hits the opening theme and he goes, "What Meanie, what's up?" And whatever comes out, comes out,
Now, what about so your co-host, Josh, right?
Yeah.
Is he a wrestling fan? I know, like Dennis, for example, wrestling fan. I was big into like the WWE era. He was more of a WCW guy. We both watched the old school wrestling and stuff, but we came from two different points of view. Now, does Josh watch any wrestling? Is he like a super fan, or is he a casual fan?
Well, Josh actually used to wrestle. He wrestled back in the day. He started a promotion when he was a teenager, and then he got into wrestling. He trained with the Wild Samoans.
Okay.
And then he went down to Ohio Valley for a little while, where he was roommates with Drew McIntyre.
Really?
Yeah, he was traveling around with those guys and stuff like that. And it just got to the point where I think some of the injuries started taking over. So he, came back home, laid low a little bit. And it wasn't until Conrad Thompson kind of started his podcast with Bruce Pritchard that he started listening to it and fell in love with wrestling again.
Okay.
And then he went to a Conrad show and he started helping out Bill Apter, because him and Bill Apter are pretty much neighbors. So he would go to shows with Bill and help Bill conduct interviews, run camera for him, do interviews for Bill Apter's website. And then he started up with a fight with So Says Chernoff. And, I kept seeing him at shows and we had this rapport, and it was just like, hey man, you want to do a show? And it's a natural fit.
Spoiler alert, I did none of that. None of that. I spent the night at Pete's house once. That's the closest to being a roommate with Drew McIntyre I'll ever get.
That's so cool.
Not as cool as you think, honestly.
I'm sure these guys got stories,
For $40, I will let you spend the night at Petey's house.
Oh, come on.
Pimp.
I'm being a team player, Pete. I will only take 17% of that.
You don't even know the math of 17% of $40. So
yeah, $20? No, but when you were wrestling, podcasts were not really a thing, but the interviews was that something that was in your mind when you sat down to put, because we'll get to your wrestling stuff. We would definitely will, but the nerdy podcast side of me wants to kind of break down your thought process behind building a podcast, because we've done it twice now. When you were wrestling and you knew the questions, you knew the dirt sheets and all that stuff, how much of that weighed into how you want to format your show?
I don't know if it really weighed into formatting my show. I know a lot of the early dirt sheet interviews helped form how I approach professional wrestling. Because I would read interviews with some of the guys. Like I read an interview with Ted DiBiase, and he was talking about something. He was talking about how he's doing an enhancement match, and the guy came up to him. The enhancement guy came up to him and started suggesting spots and stuff like that. And I was like, ooh, mental note.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. So, but as far as formatting the show, early on, our early shows, there really was no format. We talked about 3 or 4 hours. It was a bit of a train wreck. And then we started, we're like, hey man, let's have a go home spot. Well, let's do Ask Meanie Anything. Ask it at like hour and a half. Ask Meanie Anything at an hour and a half. And then that way our show went from being like 3 hours to 2 hours and 15 minutes. I was like, Ask Meanie Anything at 1 hour. So our show went from being 3 hours down to 2:15. Now it's about an hour and 50 minutes, something like that. So that's basically the only format we really have. We start a show off with conversation. We do a couple ad reads. And then, we start the go home spot with Ask Me Anything, which could be, the fans send them in as we're recording. We do a Patreon on patreon.com/mindandmeanie, where fans can watch us do our show live as we tape, and they can send questions as we're on the air. So there's a lot of times Josh will mine through the chat, and so-and-so in the chat has a question, and I'll a lot of times that's a lot of fun too, because I go into the show, I don't want to know anything. So I don't have that back and, that already concocted answer. I want to, I want to think on my feet. I want to call it in the ring kind of thing.
Oh, old school.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how much wrestling do you consume now as a fan?
It's hard. At first when the world shut down and, everybody's doing basically studio wrestling.
We're still doing it at Impact. So
it's got to be hard.
Have you wrestled in front of no fans yet?
Ever?
Besides working like an IWA Mid-South show or something like that. Have you ever wrestled in front of no fans?
Besides practice, no. Not professionally. There's plenty of times where I trained with Al, and me and him had plenty of matches nobody saw. But
yeah, but I mean, that's practice, right? That's training.
Yeah.
But
now, as Alan Iverson said, we're talking about practice.
Yeah, it's practice, man. It's practice. It's not a game. Well, it feels like practice when you're out there. Man, I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, I'm sure people tried to describe it to you. It's like, imagine wrestling practice, but you're in full costume.
Yeah.
And again, like, when you trained, right? Like it goes back to your basic training, because when you're learning spots, putting together the matches, like when you were doing with Al, you're like, okay. And then he would say something, or maybe you're doing a match with somebody else. And I was like, no, you have to wait and let the crowd, that's the point. The crowd's going to be like, oh, so in your head, you got to pretend that you hit whatever you're doing. And you're like, okay, I got to wait because the crowd should be reacting right now, even though there's no fan. I mean, it's just, it's mind boggling. Every bump hurts like more than you think. Like you coming off the top rope, forget about that. You're not going to want to do it anymore.
No, I can only imagine, I always tell people I'm more nervous in front of smaller crowds than larger crowds, because, those guys in the smaller crowds are listening to you try to call spots.
Yes. Oh my God.
So you're having this match, and those cameras and those mics are top notch. So you're trying to not to call spots out in the open and just like, duck the line, just that kind of shit, or that kind of stuff. I don't know what the language barrier is.
You can cuss.
Okay, cool. Shit. Fuckity fuck. Yeah, but yeah, I would be cognizant of, oh my God, am I calling spots too loud and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's like they just had, and this is a little spoiler alert too. So there's going to be a certain match. I don't even know if they talked about it yet. So I can't.
Be vague.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to be vague on this, but we filmed the match, and it was against 2 wrestlers, and I had to be out there in the ring. That's all I'm gonna say.
Right.
And it was a match where walking and talking they were gonna have to do that. And I'm no crowd, okay, no crowd, and I'm there. I'm like a foot away from them, and I can hear them calling the spots, and then that's when I'm like, okay, I guess I have to say something now, like, come on, get him, or something like that. And it's just calling the spots, like, yeah, absolutely. And even when, I busted my chin open like last month or whatever. And what's weird about no fans in the arena, you can stop if you want. If somebody gets hurt, you're like, okay, let's stop, let's send another match in, and then we'll pick up this one and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's totally produced. You can do that if you want. Now, our pay-per-views are.
Hey guys, I'm blown up. Give me a second here.
Okay, so it doesn't get that far, but I'm telling you, some dudes, I swear to God, some people fake injuries or fake blowing a spot just because they're blowing up, and it's like, okay, we'll do it again. But they're like, well, hold on, let's talk about this first. And I'm like,
it's kind of like when a player flops on the field in football, just they kill the momentum of the other team, or just they'll fake an injury and the crowd knows they're faking the injury just to stop the momentum and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And that's what, like, when I got my little injury, I was bleeding and stuff, and then immediately everybody was like, are you okay? You want to stop? And I'm like, no, I don't want to stop. I mean, we still got 5 minutes left in this match. I'm like, I want to go. I don't want to don't
want to cool back down and then have to
still bleed and stuff. Yeah, like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So, I don't have a question with that, but I mean, you are. I would say you're very lucky not having to wrestle in front of no fans. I did not look forward to it going back, but I do have to give it to everybody in the pandemic.
Yeah,
all the wrestlers going out and doing that, like Ring of Honor is still doing it. Like, they have nobody. They don't even have. Do you watch any of the Ring of Honor product right now?
Yeah.
Some of it.
Yeah,
they don't even have piped in crowd noise, and like, even though everybody knows it's piped in, it does still add a little something to the match. It's like, oh, okay. So, but anyways, I give it to you for not having to wrestle during the pandemic.
But do you guys hear the crowd noise in the arena as they pipe it in, or is it just audio only for the people at home?
No, so it's audio only at the people at home. So I don't know how they do it at WWE. I don't know how the Thunderdome is, or if it's they can hear them or whatever the case may be. But even when back in January, it was our first time we ever piped in crowd noise, and it was for our pay-per-views are live, so we have an audio guy piping it in, like, okay, that would be a cheer. It's so weird, right? Like that, like, you got to do it on the fly, and you can't hear it in the arena. So the only bad part about that is, like, the fans at home are watching and going, oh, this is great. This is a great match. In the arena, you can hear a pin drop, but you also have like D'Lo and Matt Striker calling the match.
Oh, that's the worst.
Yes.
You can hear them calling the match.
Well, they are, like, you can hear it. They do a good job audio, but at the same time, D'Lo and Striker, they can't hear the piped in crowd noise either. Gotcha. So a big move just happens, right? And they'll sell it like, oh yeah, that was an awesome move or whatever. But then the crowd whoever's doing the crowd noise might not like be it. Sometimes it doesn't match up. So I'm hoping very soon that Impact will also get the crowds back. Ring of Honor, I think, already announced it, right?
I believe so. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah,
MLW's coming back to Philadelphia in July, and they're going to have a crowd. I don't know. I think Ring of Honor said they're going to have fans too, but I don't know when or where. So
yeah, Dennis, do you know?
It's the Best in the World pay-per-view will be their first one. I don't know the exact date, but I think it was just right before your tapings, right? Because
Yeah.
talking to Dalton Castle about that.
Yeah, that's right. So they're gonna have, and then WWE already announced, they're gonna have people, and I'm hoping, this is like, I'm crossing my fingers because I already know what I'm doing at the Impact pay-per-view, and I'm hoping there's gonna be a crowd there, and maybe they'll announce something. I mean, we got like 7 or 8 weeks. I'm hoping they're like, yeah, let's call an audible. Let's, but
now does Impact run the same building all the time, or?
Yeah. So right now we'll have to run at it's actually the Nashville offices, the Skyway Studios.
Okay.
So it's a bunch of sound stages. Like they film commercials like right across the hall at the other sound stage. They set up our wrestling ring. We film there for like anywhere from 2 to 4 days, and then they tear it down and pack it up, and that's that. Before that, like did you work for Impact at all?
I worked for Impact on their 4th show ever.
Oh, so way back in the Asylum days.
Yeah, I did a run-in, and that was it.
What was the run? See, I didn't get there till like maybe a year and a half, 2 years later. What was your run-in?
I ran in and DDT'd Francine from ECW.
Beautiful. I love it. Why wouldn't you, right?
Yeah, and that was basically it. That's when I was in my skinny meanie days, and I was the light blue meanie, and that was about it. They were going to have me in for the ECW tribute pay-per-view, but we couldn't come to terms on travel arrangements. I was like,
on travel arrangements. What do they want it to like put you on 3 connecting flights or something like that?
Greyhound.
Dude, the very next day I had a flight to California. I had a paid vacation I was doing. I was like, hey, can you just fix this ticket? Fix my ticket so I could go from Philly, Florida, California.
So,
and it's not like they didn't have a travel agent working in the office, with Bob Ryder. So, and we'll get back to you. And then, they had the Blue Tilly on the pay-per-view. So
so they had a knockoff Blue Meanie?
That Stevie Meanie, and then that's one of their security crew dress up as the Blue Meanie with the blue hair and the face paint and all that good stuff. So
let me guess, that was I don't even want to guess the era. It was okay. So bad.
It had to be it was 2009. So
okay,
because I know, because I was following the Phillies comeback in the season. The Phillies had won the World Series, and we went out to California and we went to see a couple Angels games, and the Phillies were making a comeback, and that's how I know things in my life, by sports and by Google. Yeah. Where was I? Let me Google that wrestling show. Okay, this is what I was doing that date.
So you're just as bad as Pete is, because Pete sometimes doesn't remember who he's met or who he's talked to, so he's adapted the, oh man, good to see you again.
I always do the good to see you. I never go good to meet you, because that's the case I've met somebody before.
Absolutely. I've done it to, oh my God. I'd probably say like the biggest, I don't know, star. What would you say, Dennis, is like maybe MVP?
That might be the best story, at least.
Yeah. It was, man, you might have been on the show. I don't know. It was like Tommy Dreamer's like 3rd House of Hardcore show or something. It was like, I want to say 2014.
Yeah.
And like I went up to him. I think he was at the time, Brian Kendrick and the Bucks, I was traveling with them and they were talking to him. And then, I went over and I said hi to him. Nice to meet you. I'm Petey. And he was like, yeah, I know, we met. And I'm like, but good thing Brian Kendrick stuck up for me. And he was like, he's really not an asshole. I like promise. He's just like, like, cause I guess he used to work for Impact for a little bit. So I'm like, okay, I'm an asshole, but I did the same thing to Christian York. Like Christian York, I said, hey, nice to meet you. And he goes, yeah, we've met. And I'm like, where? He's like, Hermie Sadler show. And I'm like, oh yeah. Okay. I remember. I'm like, we didn't work though, did we? He's like, yeah. We actually worked a singles match. And I'm like, so here's the thing. And this is good because you've transformed your body over the years, right? Yeah. So a lot of these guys like MVP, but it's still like MVP looked totally different as I think it was Antonio Banks that he did as MVP. And then same with Christian York. Christian York, You guys were in ECW at the same time, right?
Yes.
At the very end.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So like he was like in okay shape, but not like the Impact days when he was there in like I don't know 2012 or 10 or whatever it is. Like he was like jacked, and I'm like, who is this guy? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I mean, you know what it's like transforming your body and stuff.
Dude, I just know what it's like to just say the wrong things and then beat myself up for it for the next couple of years. You know, I'm still beating up myself over shit I've said in third grade. Yeah, I'll be standing there and I'll be standing there with Mrs. Meanie. I'll just go, ugh. She go, what is it? I go, third grade. I could have said this. Or I'll be in the bathroom and she'll hear me in the back. If I remember something really stupid I did, I'll let out a little woo like that. And she's like, "Are you Ric Flair wooing in the shower?" I was like, "Nah, fifth grade." Just things I've said. And it's even harder in wrestling when you meet so many people and you've done so many things, and it's not like you have a dear diary. This Rolodex you could go to when you've met somebody. You just, it's like you're living Groundhog's Day every day. Every day is the same day, but like scenery kind of.
Yeah, and I'm sure, I know ECW. Didn't you guys do like multiple tapings in a row?
Well, we would do like one show, and one show would be like 3 or 4 weeks. Like an ECW arena show would be
3 or 4 weeks of TV. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Between matches and promos and the where we do the Pulp Fiction segments at the end and different things like that, or they would throw in some fan cam footage, from like the night before. This is what we did last night at fan cam, a non-televised event. They always had cameras going anyway.
Well, did you ever get confused? So I just recently I got confused. We had 4 days of tapings. Okay. And I want to say we filmed like maybe 8 weeks of TV, maybe more. I don't know. And a lot of promos, a lot of matches and stuff. And we film it out of order. It seems like nowadays with this, just the way wrestling is, even before the pandemic, like a lot of it is more taped. Like, you do one live one and then you do so many taped ones. And that's just like, it's easier on travel, budget, everything like that, whatever they decide, why it saves money. But I'm sitting there and it's the last day, but we're filming a promo of something like a match that we filmed on day one. And I'm like, what is this for? And they're like, oh, the match you already had. I'm like, wait, we wrestled? And it's me again. I'm like, because I wrestled the same person like multiple times in different like multiple matches, tag matches. I'm like, which match was this? And it's hard to remember. Did you ever get like confused like that when you guys did like multiple tapings? You're like, wait, like, did we already film this? Is this later on? Because I know you guys did a lot of like post-tape promos, right?
Yeah. Well, we like for our TV, like we say we would run the ECW arena, and then Paul would keep us out till like 6 a.m. filming promos. Where we either tape them at the arena, or if the arena didn't want us there that late, we'd go over to the hotel, the world famous Travel Lodge, which I said, if you ever stayed at the the Travel Lodge in South Philadelphia, you are immune from COVID-19. Because I call it, the building is a big round building, and we all called it the Cylinder of Sin because
everything happened there. Yeah, no, I could understand.
But we never did anything quite like that. Like we either filmed promos for stuff that happened at the arena, or we would just do nonsensical things. Like one of my favorite promos is me and Bubba Ray Dudley doing the Marx Brothers, where we're walking backwards and we bump into each other and we turn around and we start doing the
mime.
Yeah, the mime thing. And then we both go to punch each other, but I flinch and run into a wall and collapse. And, he just stands over me. You're nothing but a coward.
When he was doing the stuttering gimmick. Nice.
Yeah. But fortunately, I haven't had to do like the Pulp Fiction version of wrestling where it's all disjointed and stuff. Thankfully, back in when I was in WWE, early days of Raw, they would do Raw Monday, Tuesday to save on travel for the following week. You know, they already had you on the road, so you tape you do the live Raw on Monday, do a taped the following week Raw that Tuesday. But then when Eric Bischoff started leaking the results, they're like, well, we gotta go live every week. So
do you miss that? I mean, that part of your career? I know you've transitioned really well into what you're doing now in life.
I still do independent wrestling, but I'm very picky. Like this, my last match was in Ring of Honor. I did it's pretty cool. My last two matches were a week apart. I did a match in MLW with Richard Holiday. Then the following week, I was surprised in the Ring of Honor, their version of the Royal Rumble. So I was like, you know what? If that's my career, perfect. You know, I never worked for Ring of Honor before, so why not? But now, you know, with the world opening up back up, I got a bucket list moment where I got a chance to go to. I have a chance to go to Alaska.
Oh, with KM there, Kevin Matthews.
Yeah,
awesome. He's asked me, and then he's like, "Man, you're trying to abuse me on pay," and I'm like, "Hey, dude, like." I'm not. And again, I'm picky as well. I'm like, hey, I don't want to leave my house for like, they
don't pay us to wrestle. They pay us to leave the house.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, if I'm somewhere, like if the, you know, my backyard was Alaska, I'd be like, yeah, I'll be there. You know, I'll cut you a break. No problem, brother. Right. But like, I have to leave the house. I have to fly to Alaska. I have to be away from my family, everything. I'm like, you got to pay me for that. I love wrestling. You have to pay me to be away from my life.
Yeah, there was a moment when ECW shut down. Somebody ran a tour of Alaska. I was so mad I wasn't booked on it because, you know, I've wrestled Hawaii. I've wrestled, you know, most of the faraway spots. I was like, I just need Alaska, you know. So it's good. This is like, you know, I'll pay me whatever. I know I'll make my money in gimmicks.
Yep.
So, and I'm bringing Mrs. Meanie out, so it'll be like a little mini vacation and stuff like that. And we'll stay an extra day and see the sights. But no, I'm going to do that. And I'm tagging with Nova. We're doing the BWO. And I think one day it's going to be me, Nova, and Black Machismo. We're going to do a 6-man.
Oh, Jay Lethal's going to be there? Well, as Black Machismo. What's the date on this?
I want to say the end of August.
End of August. Okay. So that'll be nice. It'll be like 24-hour sunlight, right? Ish.
Yeah. I already Googled. I was like, oh, what's the weather? You know, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That's a bucket list moment. And you know, I got offers coming up, but again, I'm picky. I don't want to my days of working for Billy Bob, Joe Jacks, you know, bullshit promotion and wherever. I'm just like, nah, I'm cool.
Yeah.
I'd rather stay home because I don't know about you, but like, you know, I got side hustles, side gimmicks where I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
Now I got to figure, all right, if I take this booking, I ask for X amount, say I ask for X amount, I got to factor in, okay, I got to take time away from the side hustle.
Yep.
So, and then when you do all the math, you're like, I'm really just leaving the house for, you know, $1.50 or whatever, whatever the math you want to do. It's got to be worth, you know, me leaving my other things, leaving my family to, you got to pay for parking. You got to eat in the airport. You got to, you know, this, that, and the other thing.
Absolutely.
Once you add up everything that goes into it, is it worth it? You know, and, you know, then there's a couple days to recover, you know, just like, ugh.
Yeah. From being on the road. No, so I'm the exact same way, like, you know, the side hustle and stuff like that. I'm like, you know, I got to take time away from that to, you know, do the wrestling and stuff. And, but, you know, I also have, you know, things on a bucket list like that I'll do that I'll be like, hey, yeah, like you said, Alaska, you know, teaming up with one of my bucket lists. And I want to say maybe it was yours, but I did the King of Trios in 2019. And Jordan Grace is one that started it. She just posted like the chainmail with the glasses and calling herself Thick Mama Pump. Yeah. And then, you know, Quack, he contacted me and he was like, hey, do you, Steiner, and, you know, her want to do like a deal? And I'm like, Yeah, dude, that's a bucket
Yeah.
list. Like, so when you did it with the BWO with Stevie and Nova, was that like a yes, absolutely, I'll do it.
Yeah, I'll do anything. Like if like Nova's really winding down and he doesn't want to do anything, but he goes, if Meanie and Stevie are there, I'll be there. Just sometimes you just do it just to see your friends. And there was a series of shows where it almost seemed like they felt like ECW reunion shows, and people are like, oh, these guys are just chasing down their past glory. It's like, no, I want to see my friends. I want to hang out with people I know I can leave my wallet in my pants and go to the ring and it'll still be there, stuff like that. So it's just, there's things you do for business and there's things you do for pleasure.
I never understood why more independent shows haven't incorporated more podcast recordings into the shows, because it seems like every wrestler has a podcast and every wrestler would love to do their podcast in front of a live crowd. Not all of them do it. I think very few, honestly, wrestler podcasters do their shows in front of crowds. I would imagine that if you're in the middle of a ring recording a podcast while people are selling, their merch and people are listening all around, dude, that might draw out more of the older wrestlers who don't really want to wrestle. Kind of like people that are Nova winding down or you, where you could sit in the ring and talk to Nova for 40 minutes.
Yeah. And that's a thought that's happened between me and Josh. Our podcast is on the MLW network. So maybe if they have an MLW event, we can do like an hour before the show, and then out where they do merch and stuff like that, set up a little table and stuff like that, and people could just listen to us record before the main show starts and stuff like that. So it's definitely makes sense, or something for after the show, like an after party. That's another thing where I think a lot of independent promoters don't get the hint that like they want to have this extravagant 19 match epic show where if you just had like 7 matches in a show that lasted 2 hours, you can make more money having a catered after party where you can get, pay to go meet the wrestlers and to have beers with the wrestlers and eat with the, all this, that, and the other thing. But, by the time the show's over, it's 1 a.m. and people are putting their coats on before the final 3 count hits. It's just like, oh man, there's so much more cool stuff. Like you could have a show that lasts 2 hours. Come on out to the after party and watch the recording of Mind of the Meanie or this, that, and the other thing. And that could go till 2 a.m. because you're at a bar, and it's having a good time,
Yeah. And what about, so dude, podcasts I know is inspiration or like motivation, factor of yours and stuff. It's the same for me. And I know one of my other ones is, like producing, like being an agent and stuff like that, having my hands in, helping out the younger guys and producing the product on TV. Do you have any like aspirations to do that kind of thing?
I have a couple students that are out there. There was a period of time where, and I need to get back. I was a coach at the Monster Factory in Paulsboro, New Jersey. Mm-hmm. I coach guys like, now what's he going by now? Steve. He's going by Steve Macklin now.
Okay. So you helped train Macklin?
Yeah, Steve Cutler. I helped train him. Damian Priest in WWE. I helped coach Matt Riddle. Gio in Ring of Honor. Ian Riccaboni, who does play-by-play for Ring of Honor. I helped coach him. I coach guys, and I'm more of a life coach. Guys like Matt Riddle, he doesn't need me to teach him how to wrestle. No. I just had to reprogram his motherboard from MMA to pro wrestling. Because in MMA they're always, go forward.
Yeah, crouch down. No, you got to be like this. All that.
Yeah. Just I always told him, it's better to be the talent that needs to be told to pull it back a little bit than a talent that you need to motivate. So just there's like a bunch of kids out there I've coached, and it's some stuff I want to continue to do, but once the world gets back to normal, I won't get back over to the Monster Factory. It's 20 minutes from my house, so I'm 10 minutes from the ECW arena, 20 minutes from the Monster Factory. I want to give back to the business in a way that the business gave back to me, because there's plenty of times I screwed up, and people pull me aside and go, hey, you don't want to do that next time, or whether in the ring or in real life, and I want there needs to be more veterans to coach these younger kids along and tell them how it used to be, but how it could be in the future. You know, I know things change and things evolve, but do a modern take on an old school thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I totally get it. And what I feel, and I don't know if you feel the same way, but I look at wrestling now, obviously phenomenal athletes. Like the athleticism in wrestling has like skyrocketed through the roof.
Yeah.
But what I feel like there's a lack of is like actual, like larger than life characters. Like I look at your character, the Blue Meanie, like you walk out, people like, okay, yeah, okay, I know what he's going to be about. I get it, you know? And I mean, I don't, this doesn't mean like I put you down, but you can walk out there and people will remember seeing you. Will they remember your match? I don't know. Like maybe, you know, it depends, but I don't feel like there's enough of those characters. So the next generation, like it's no, they're not going to be able to be like, hey, let's book a Blue Meanie, you know, like let's get some fans in the seat, because that same person that's like 25 years old right now, when he's, you know, 50, he's not going to be able to do all the flips that he used to be able to do. He doesn't have a character that he built. So, I mean, do you feel the same way in wrestling, like nowadays?
Oh, absolutely. And people have no patience. We live, I like to use the term, we live in a microwave mentality where people want results now.
Yeah.
You know, I don't care if I go out there and have a 5-star match. I want to give people moments. Mm-hmm. Because that's all they really do. They come out back, you know, you can have your match, you go back out and to the merch table. Oh, that was great when you did that thing. And they tell you that one thing that they remember, you know. The most important part of a wrestling show is the opening match, the main event, the finish of the main event, and everything else is just peaks and valleys. And that's what ECW was. That's what my role was, you know, where, you know, two guys go out there and kill each other, and I go out there and lighten the mood to bring them back down a little bit, but give them a little something funny to do. Then the next thing's serious. So, but yeah, there's really definitely a lack of characters. It's just like, it's like a robot factory almost. And that's not a knock on the performers. It's just how that maybe they're broke in, you know, and just, I remember when I first broke in, I wanted to have one finishing move. I see guys doing like 3 or 4 finishing moves in the course of a match. Is like, man, put some of that stuff in your back pocket, save it for later.
I still haven't pulled out my other moves for later yet, because I'm like, yeah, I got a finishing move and nobody can ever tell me what other move I do besides my one finishing move. So I'm like, pff. And that's why I don't want to go on a tangent, but like a lot of the times, and I don't know if I'm doing it right or wrong, but you know, they talk like, you know, Terry Taylor coaching me and stuff like that. Like I was always a heel on TV, but you know, they always coach like, oh, your comeback, you know, the finish of your comeback is the pin, right? Okay. I would never, and I refused to pin after a move, because a false finish that's what it means. People really legit think that is the finish of your match. Unless I do the Canadian Destroyer, nobody's going to think that I'm going to win that match. So why pin somebody on a move that nobody is going to buy? So that's why I've always.
How do you feel? How do you feel that everybody does a Canadian Destroyer now?
I could care less. I mean, at first I was like, wait a second, but I was surprised it took like 10 years or maybe 8, 9, 10 years for people to actually start like over abusing it. I thought for sure, like back when I started doing it in like 03, 04, like everybody would start doing it, but it didn't start becoming a thing until, I don't know, 2014, 15, 16, I something like that. So I'm surprised it took so long.
Yeah.
But I you know, I just look at guys in their matches and, you know, I look at their comebacks and, or whatever the case, like it seems like, yeah, even when I put together matches and I'm in these multiple man matches, it's like, yeah, we're going to do false finishes. And I'm like, well, I know what you guys mean. You're doing a big move, but it's not really considered a false finish. A false finish is when people are biting. It's like, oh, that's done. That's done. And that's why you'll never see me try to pin somebody after something other than the Canadian Destroyer. If it is, it's to set up something for the next guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think the the what's that word? The psychology of the business has changed. When last time I tagged with Steiner, it was me, Steiner, and Jordan Grace. We did a show out in Cali back in August of 19, I want to say, and we had to wrestle a 6-man match, and I felt bad telling this to Scott because Scott's old school, come back, finish, done, right?
Yeah.
But we layered it a little bit, and he looked at me and he was like, "Well, that doesn't make sense."
Well,
and
you got to do that in your Scott voice. Come on,
please.
I can't.
You can't do a Scotty story without doing the Scotty impression.
Well, so I'm telling him the match because Scott wouldn't be there and call the match. I was the liaison. I'm sure you worked with Scott before. You know how he works and stuff. So, yeah, I said to him, yeah, so we're going to do, you get to come back, this, that, and this, but then this guy will cut you off, and then we'll do this, this, and this, and then this guy, and then we're going to the finish. And he's like, well, that doesn't make sense. And I'm like, well, I know, but that's just how it is. And he's like, and he goes, did somebody change the psychology of wrestling? And I'm like, and my answer was actually, yeah, Scott, like the psychology of wrestling has changed. Like it's not like that anymore. And he was just like blown away and this is 2019. Like he knows the psychology has changed. He just doesn't want to let that go. And I'm the same way. I'm like, I watch guys comebacks now and it's like, you can't even breathe. They do like 100 moves and it's like, and it's phenomenal. They're phenomenal athletes, but I'm like, you get so much more if you just slow it down a little bit and let people digest exactly what you were just saying before.
Yeah. I always tell, younger guys, wrestling fans are 2 to 3 beats behind what they see in the ring. They'll see a spot and then it's 1, 2. Oh, they'll go, oh, but it takes like 2 or 3 seconds for everything to digest, compute, so to speak. And like if you're not given a chance to digest what they just saw, then it's all for nothing. And you're putting mileage on your body. And oh, well, you were an ECW, you did all that. Well, yeah, that's how I got the opinion. That's how I formed my opinion. Like I always say, I don't like this deathmatch stuff. Well, you were an ECW. Yeah, that's how I got the opinion. I was an ECW. I saw what it did. I know where you're going. But just slow it down. If you feel like you're going too slow, go slower. I hear about it a lot in sports. I was listening to an interview with Chris Long, and he said, man, when I first went from college to the pros, I felt like I was standing in the middle of a 3-lane highway, cars just zipping by me. But eventually the sport and so eventually wrestling slows down for you mentally to where you feel like you're going slow. But when you watch it back, you're actually just letting fans, digest what they see, all it takes is one simple, I know this is an audio, platform too, but just a quick, just look at the crowd. The crowd wants to be involved. They want to be acknowledged. You don't have to pander to them like, please cheer, but you just give them a quick, and they want to react, Dude, when I was a teenager, I did a trip to Memphis. I went to Nashville Fairgrounds as a teenager to watch Memphis wrestling, and Jerry Lawler was, I think he might have been fighting Bill Dundee, and it was a draw, and we're the smart fans in the crowd, and we're going 5 more minutes, 5 more, because Jerry worked us to make us, 5 more minutes. We were the group of fans that are like, okay, you got to boo the heels and cheer the faces now. We got to, like that. We were the Philly, rowdy Philly kids who came down. But just fans want to be involved in the show, but you got to A, acknowledge them, and B, let them breathe.
Let me ask you guys this, because I'm a fan and I don't pretend to be the inside knowledge guy, and I don't like using the wrestling slang because I feel like I'm a poser by doing that because I'm not in it. So when I listen to podcasts and I hear the guys that are like using the wrestling slang, it's kind of a turnoff for me. But being the outsider looking in and you guys being the outsiders, if there were guys that went back to that old school style of wrestling, could that still work now? Or would they be typecast as maybe old or out of date? Or would it even work now in today's wrestling?
Like I said, you could do a modern take on a old school thing, you know? I mean, it's always this tale of good versus evil is thousands of years old. You know, they've been passed down through books and plays and hundreds of years. Good versus evil, and dissension. That's all that you need to give them is that story, and let it play out, and just have a concise finish. Or if it's not done in the first match, have a cliffhanger. When I was a kid, they always do the to be continued.
Yeah.
You can have a finish where everything's a little bit muddy and you have to have a rematch kind of thing. So there's things you can do. There's things, because there's some wrestling that I loved growing up. I go back and watch it. I'm like, but there's a reason why I fell in love with it. And there's a reason why I wrestle now, but I don't really wrestle like I did, like the stuff I watched, but I cherry pick things that I grew up on and incorporate into my own stuff, kind of like a cover band. Like Van Halen, my favorite band in the world, they started off as a cover band. And then they went from doing covers of other songs and then creating their own tunes, and their covers sounded like the song, but it sounded like Van Halen doing the song and stuff like that. But, and then they became the biggest band in the world. When you're breaking in the wrestling business, you kind of have to be that version of a cover band. You pick and choose, cherry pick from this guy, that, and the other thing. And eventually you find your own voice within the character that you've been mimicking. It becomes yourself. Like when Raven gave me the Blue Meanie character, it was from the movie The Yellow Submarine. And then he had me study the movie, and Raven would sit in a chair in the middle of the living room and yell out topics. Blue Meanie do a promo on toilet paper. In character, I would have to be, the Blue Meanie doing the character. But then eventually he started having us doing parodies where we're the Fabulous Ones, or Baron Von Stevie and Colonel Domini or whatever. Eventually it morphed into what he started having me do, into what I eventually became, which the Blue Meanie character is just me with the volume turned up. Everything I got in trouble for in grade school, and the little notes they would send home with my report card. Brian keeps making fart noises in class. I start getting paid for. Just you find your own voice, and like you said, like Petey said, have a character, that people can relate to. They come through the window. Before you're not halfway through the curtain, they're reacting to who you are. So. Wrestling's a copy. Wrestling, like pro sports, is a copycat league. When Jericho debuted on Monday Night Raw, every guy on the Indies had a shiny shirt, because Jericho had the shiny shirt.
Yep.
Then one guy started, in the late 90s, early 2000s, guys started wearing those tights that look like trash bags, hefty bags on their legs and stuff like that. One guy did it, and then, hey, who made that for you? And then everybody started doing it. Find what everybody else is doing and start doing something the total opposite. That's how you stand out in the business. In ECW, everybody's barbed wire chairs. Yep. And here I am, this 300-pound guy in a half shirt and Daisy Dukes with blue hair and raccoon glasses going, but it got over just because it was just so weird, so Clockwork Orangey, with Raven and Stevie. And eventually Nova.
I gotta tell you, we're pushing almost an hour here, and it feels like we've only been talking for like 15 minutes for me, because I sit back and I was listening. This is actually a very educational podcast that we had tonight.
I'm enjoying it. It's good to see that I can come on here with Petey, and it's like we've had this conversation our whole lives.
You guys actually might have, but you forgot it.
Dude, if Al Snow walked in this room, I would finish the joke I told him 2 years ago.
Hang on. Al, do you want to come on? No, he's busy. He hangs out in my apartment. So
I have to tell the story. Me and Al were at WrestleCon in Orlando, and dude, I've spent so much time on the road with him, and sometimes not even the biggest lessons are in the ring. Sometimes they're on the car rides and stuff like that. But I started training with Al. He was training Dan Severn for the UFC. Dan would come down, and I was basically his suplex dummy. And but like I said, we're at WrestleCon in Orlando, and I'm over at Al's table. I look over at fucking Dan Severn. He's got his NWA world belt. He's got all the belts he won in UFC. I was like, yeah, I'll go up to Dan and ask him where he got his fucking replica belts. And Al just fucking, he almost took a knee on that. He started laughing, and then he composed himself, and he went over and he asked him, and then I was the one who couldn't keep my composure. But he's like, "Hey, Dan, where'd you get all these replica belts?" And Dan's a proud guy. He just went, "Oh." He just deflated. The guy who could pretty much kill us with his pinky. This was just like,
Wow. Well, listen, we're gonna wrap this up, and Meanie, I hope that we have many more podcasts with you on.
Absolutely.
Especially with the guys, because I know Dimitri Young is a massive fan, and he would be marking out right now for you. And Lars, he was excited and pissed off that we had you booked when he was out of town. So
yeah, we'll do this again.
Absolutely. And they all said, by the way, if you ever want them on your podcast, they would love to do it.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm just putting you on the spot now while we're on the air.
Mister, I don't want any guess. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
No,
I don't know about PD though. I know his booker. So if you ever want PD on, he's a big time guy. You don't look him in the eyes. You call him by third person, which would be the fourth person for you. He's a diva, believe it or not. The things I have to do to get him ready each week for the podcast, the green M&Ms, it's all that stuff. He has a writer for each episode.
I did do the green M&Ms one time. I was just messing around with a booker. Did I tell you about that, Dennis?
No.
Oh, I thought you were bringing that up because I told you about it. It was a local show, and he was like, "Hey, can I give him the brother price? You know what I mean?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll come down." I said, "But I need all green M&Ms," as a joke. And he actually had a mason jar full of green M&Ms. I'm like, "What's this?" He's like, "Remember, like weeks ago, you asked me for a green M&Ms," and I'm like, "Dude, I was joking. Like I wasn't expecting green M&Ms, but that really happened." So
you know what that's about, though, don't you?
I'm a Van Halen fan, so you're preaching to the choir here. Should I go on?
Go on.
Well, Van Halen, my favorite band on the planet. They're number one, and everybody else is fighting for number two. They used to put in their tour riders in very fine print that in their dressing room they needed a bowl of M&Ms with all the brown ones removed. And if they came in and they didn't see the bowl of M&Ms with the brown ones removed, they would fucking destroy the dressing room, because they know that the promoter didn't read their tour rider. Oh. They're like, well, if you didn't read that little part, if you didn't read that fine print, how do I know if I go on stage, it's not going to fall apart? They wanted people to read every detail of the contract, and they put through that little thing in there to make sure somebody read the fucking contract.
Yep.
How do I know? Because they started doing that after they did a show, I want to say in South America, and the way they built the stage almost fucking collapsed before the show. And they're like, fuck, we got to put shit in the rider. We need this equipment, that. And then bowl M&Ms with the brown ones removed just to make sure they fucking read the fucking contract.
Love it.
Yeah. That's my number one band in the world. And I've been listening to a lot of Black Crowes lately too. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, listen, for everybody at home, this podcast is going to end. We will say our goodbyes off the air. Pete, I got to tell you, I'm actually I know Blue Meanie may be a little disappointed that Lars and Dimitri and D-Mac aren't here, but I'm kind of happy that we had them all to ourselves. It was a fun, honestly, it was a whole different interview than normal because we would all take turns asking a question. There's no real flow to it sometimes. This was a very intimate and a conversation, not even really an interview. And this was what I was hoping for.
Yeah, that's what Mind of the Meanie is all about, is this conversation. So I love talking to different people about different things. So this was refreshing. And you guys, I'll definitely come back on.
Yeah. Are you
Awesome.
going to ask them the other two questions now, Pete?
No, I'll save them for next time.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Because $5 says DMAC asked that question on air. $5 because we don't know what we're going to ask. So I'm saying this now on this podcast. I bet you DMAC asks one of those two questions.
All right. Well, stay tuned for part 2 of the Blue Meanie.
That's right. Blue, before we go, where can people find you? Hang on. You got to put yourself over for a sec.
Absolutely. Thank you. If you want to listen to the Mind of the Meanie podcast drops every Monday morning at 6 a.m. Wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. If you would like to support the Blue Meanie, go to prowrestlingtees.com/Blue Meanie or prowrestlingtees.com/Mind of the Meanie. It's another way to support the podcast. If you want to listen to Mind of the Meanie as we record it live, go to our Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Mind of the Meanie. We do live watch-alongs where you can watch us record the podcast. We do match watch-alongs. We do Zoom calls. We do special merchandise for Patreon members only. So go join us over at patreon.com/Mind of the Meanie.
Thank you so much for joining us. This absolutely was one of my favorite podcasts. And I'm not just saying.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been great. And I'd never, ever say that on the air. Never.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching The Wrestling Perspective. And you'll know where to find us because you watch us. So I'm not doing it. Yeah. You're watching now, so you found us. And tell your friends maybe that's who's not watching, and then they're watching. And then we're not going to tell you how to find us, but you can tell your friend. So do my job for me.
If you like it, tell a friend. If you hate it, tell an enemy.
Yeah.
I love it. Stolen.
Yeah, that's right. All right, guys. Thank you so much. We'll say our goodbyes off the air.